Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving. And sometimes pretty fast if you're the Car Chick. Now, here's he is.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Straight Shift. I know I have not been releasing episodes as often. I'm doing a once a month format right now, but my goal is to get back to twice a month. It's just a combination of being really freaking busy right now and making some changes within my car buying company, but also recovering from COVID still. My lungs and all just are not back to what they once were. So we're doing the best we can. So to compensate you for the lack of frequency, I'm going to be doing some longer podcasts, and today's may possibly be the longest simply because we have a lot to go over. Despite the fact that every car manufacturer in the world is struggling to produce cars and trucks and SUVs due to the global computer shortage, that's not stopping them from coming out with a lot of great new vehicles for the 2022 model year. Some really exciting brand spanking new models are being introduced, some of which are already on sale now, including some surprising electric vehicles that will be going on sale. We also have several popular models that have undergone a full redesign. So today we're going to talk about some of these exciting new changes that you can expect to see both already for sale right now and coming in the next several months up until the end of the year and into the beginning of actual calendar year 2022. This is not even a comprehensive list of everything that is changing and coming out. If it were, this would be a 4-hour podcast, but I have narrowed it down to some models that are of interest to my clientele and the people that tend to listen to my podcast. So kind of your more average car shoppers, not necessarily big nerdy car enthusiasts like me, but there are still a few models that I'm going to talk about that I probably won't end up buying, or at least not a lot of them, but they're kind of too cool and or too crazy not to mention. So let's get started and talk about some of the redesigns that are coming out. Starting with the ever-popular Honda Civic. The Civic made its debut in the United States back in 1972, slightly after I made my debut in the United States, but we won't talk about that. But this was in the middle of the oil crisis, the 1973 OPEC oil crisis. Actually, the foundation for that started back in 1971. So when the Civic came to the U.S. market as this little fuel-efficient hatchback from Japan, it really could not have had better timing in the market. Now, granted, American car buyers were pretty skeptical of this little Japanese hatchback, and this was before we were used to lots of technology and automotive products from Japan that have now become synonymous with reliability. Back in the 70s, people were still, unfortunately, very prejudiced against the Japanese, and therefore very, very skeptical about this little Honda thing that was coming to the American market. However, the other choices in the Econobox segment were the Chevy Vega and, the Ford Pinto. So, given the lack of competition, although we had a Chevy Vega, our Vega I think was maybe mid-70s, maybe it was like a 74 or 75. I'll have to ask my mom. And it was lime green. It's actually the first car that I really remember purchasing. I remember sitting in the dealership on a hard plastic chair while my dad haggled to death with a poor salesman so that we could get this obnoxiously green Chevy Vega. And of course, I loved it because it was obnoxious. Never had a Ford Pinto. Yeah, so. But needless to say, the Civic, didn't have the strongest competition, and it also got 40 miles to the gallon. That was nearly double what the Chevy Vega got, nor did it have the spontaneous combustion problem of the Ford Pinto. So a lot of American car buyers decided to take a chance on this little Civic, and you know what? They were not disappointed. So fast forward 50 years, and the Civic is still one of the most popular small cars in America. And this is the 11th generation model that is coming out for 2022, and it's getting a thorough makeover inside and out. So what's changing? It's going to be a little bit roomier inside. They're trying to increase the passenger space, give you a little bit more cargo space in the trunk. The base 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that powers the LX and the Sport models is a little bit underpowered in my opinion. And I'm sorry, why would you give the Sport model of any vehicle your base engine? Sport. I do not think that means what they think it means. So I'm not really sure what their logic is there, because the 1.5-liter turbo engine, which is way better, that's going in the EX and the Touring models, and that's going to be a lot peppier. I do not know why the Sport model would not get the turbo motor. I'm just not understanding that. But both of those engines are going to be married to Honda's CVT transmission, which has been decently programmed, unless you put it in econo mode. And I suppose it still is really well programmed for economy mode, but that mode and I just simply do not get along. I cannot drive a car in that mode at all. Of course, that's probably more me than the programming, but both of them get good gas mileage. The base engine is going to get you that 40 miles per gallon that made the Civic famous, and it's very similar to the turbo motor, because the turbos are just so well programmed that even though you get more power, you also get the good fuel economy. So you can't really go wrong with either one. So if you don't have the legged foot and you're on a little bit more of a budget, you can get the less expensive model with the smaller engine and you'll be fine. Now, one of the big changes is that they are going to a digital gauge cluster. It's kind of similar to Audi's virtual cockpit, but way less complicated. It's pretty cool. I'm just concerned about how well it's actually going to work, because Honda has been plagued these last few years with electronics issues, hence the big class action lawsuit. So I'm hopeful, though, that they're working out those kinks, because it's a very crisp and clean design, and it's pretty cool. You look through the steering wheel, and instead of seeing the old analog gauges that we're used to, it's all really digital. And when you hit the brake lights, you get a little cute cartoon picture of your car and the little brake lights light up in it. So somebody obviously had fun playing with that user interface, but I just really hope that it works and it works reliably. But another big change for the Civic is the styling. The 2022 Civic is going to have a sleeker, kind of more understated design than the outgoing model. It looks a lot like a small version of the Accord, and honestly, I'm not thrilled about that. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like the styling of the Accord. I think on that midsize sedan, it looks really, really good, but I loved the angular, aggressive styling of the 10th generation Civic. That was the one that I said Honda finally got the Civic right. And quite frankly, I'm sorry to see that sportier styling go. And I think too many manufacturers are making all of their vehicles look exactly the same, just in different sizes. They make the small one, the medium one, and the large one. This is not a drink at a fast food restaurant. I really think that each model should be a little more distinct, a little more unique, but they didn't ask my opinion, so at least the new styling gives the driver and the front seat passengers a near panoramic view out the windshield and the side windows, because of the way the pillars are created, and the windshield is at the same level as the bottom of the windows. It's really cool. It really does give a beautiful panoramic view. Granted, not as beautiful if you're in stop and go traffic, but it does make it easier to see all the idiots around you. The 2022 Civic is going to be available in the sedan version, which is made in Canada, and those are actually on dealer lots now, so you can go ahead and buy one of those now. The hatchback version is going to be out a little later this year, and they're making that one in Indiana. So they're North American cars. But there's no more coupe. The Civic Coupe is going away. But at least the Sporty SI and R-Types are going to be coming out early next year. So you'll still be able to get fun, more high-performance versions of the Civic. As high performance as we can get with front-wheel drive cars. But I think a lot of people are going to like it. I just kind of wish the styling had stayed a little more sporty, but I think they're trying to make it look a little more sophisticated so that your young urban professionals can still have that professional image and not look like they're an autocrosser. So whatever. I think it'll be a good car, though. The one that's really I've been very excited about, and it's already out, the Hyundai Tucson. If you've been listening to me at all for the past couple of years, I'm a big fan of the modern Hyundais. The 3-row Palisade is awesome. It's one of my favorite 3-row SUVs. The 2-row Santa Fe is one of my favorites in the midsize, but I don't need 3 rows category. And the tiny little Kona, I think, is just awesome. They're some of my favorites, but the Tucson has just never made my preferred list in that small SUV segment. I love the Subaru Foresters. I love the Mazda CX-5. Those have really topped my list in the last couple of years. And it's not that the previous model Tucson was bad. You get a lot of features for your money, is what Hyundai is known for, including their awesome and super easy to use infotainment system user interface. And the Tucson even had a reasonably comfortable ride. Granted, I felt that it was a little bit sluggish and underpowered. Granted, I think most things are sluggish and underpowered. I realize that I'm a little biased in that performance category. But in comparison to other vehicles in this segment, it was underpowered. And it still only got mediocre gas mileage for being underpowered. And then there was those few years when Hyundai tried to do this dual clutch transmission in the Tucson, and they never really got that right. So that had a lot of problems, and they weren't a lot of fun to drive. It also had diddly squat for cargo space for the segment. So it wasn't a standout option. It was an okay option, but it definitely didn't make my love list. The new Tucson, on the other hand, is very, very different. When Hyundai as a brand has always been about continuous improvement. And when they redesign a vehicle, they don't just refresh it or restyle it or make some nice subtle changes. They say, hold my beer. And they go all out and radically redesign a vehicle. And the Tucson is a great example of that. I really like the new design. The styling, it manages to look, sleek and classy, what so many of the manufacturers are going for now, but there's still a degree of badassery to the look, a little bit of an aggressiveness that they also brought into the Santa Fe when they redesigned that a couple of years ago that I really like. And yet the interior is simple. It's elegant, especially for the price point, but it's simple. It's not fussy. It's not overly complicated. Hyundai's technology can be a little overwhelming to people that are not used to such a technology-rich vehicle. But I think that they have kept it appropriately scaled and blended into the design on the Tucson. And you get a lot more legroom in the back seat and more cargo space. So that is always a plus with people that are looking to get SUVs, because it's not just about sitting up a little bit higher. It's also being able to make those Lowe's and Home Depot runs. As I'm sitting here contemplating, how the heck am I going to get 3 4x8 sheets of plywood into a Mini Cooper? Yeah, I'm going to be knocking on my neighbor's door and borrowing his truck. So the new Tucson is not just about the looks and the space. It's also going to be powered by the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder motor that is in the recently redesigned Sonata sedan. And they're going to pair that to a normal 8-speed automatic transmission. They're not trying to get all complicated with the transmissions anymore. That just didn't work. And I think this is going to give sufficient power for most drivers. It's not going to win any drag races. It's not even going to keep up with me on the on-ramps. But you're going to get good gas mileage, and it will have sufficient oomph for most drivers to commute around town and get to where they're going. I think the biggest change is going to be that the Tucson is now going to get a hybrid version and a plug-in hybrid versions. Like I said, Hyundai, when they redesign something, they say, hold my beer. The hybrid models, both the regular and the plug-in, are going to be powered by a turbocharged 1.6 liter, plus, of course, the electric motor. Both of those are going to be more powerful than the regular standard gas-powered version of the Tucson. And the plug-in model should go up to about 28 miles on the just electric before it runs out of electricity and has to switch over to gas. And that's pretty average for your plug-in hybrids today. It's very comparable to Hyundai's Ioniq, which is their plug-in hybrid sedan that's only a plug-in hybrid. There's not a gas-powered version of that. It's kind of like the Honda Clarity. Now, the Honda Clarity has a bigger range. They've been at it for a little bit longer. But I'm really excited to see these new models because we are moving towards this more electrified vehicles for, looking to the future, knowing that gas is it's a non-renewable resource. It's not going to last that long, and our dependence on foreign oil is, a challenge to our economy. So this is going to be a way that I think we're going to continue to, move in the right direction to more fuel efficiency. And they're proving that you can still get just as much power out of these things. We just have to continue to improve the technology so that we can get longer and longer distances out of one battery charge. And we have obviously more infrastructure in the United States because here in Charlotte, we just don't have hardly any infrastructure. It's very minimal for electric vehicles. So unless you live in the more trendy urban areas of Charlotte where they do have these plug-in stations, you're pretty much plugging your car in at home and you can't go too far if you have a purely electric vehicle before you run out of electricity. It's definitely a short commute to work, run to the grocery store, maybe get to the kids to school kind of vehicle, not a let's make a road trip vehicle. But that's where these hybrids and plug-in hybrids come in because you can use just the electric motor when you're tooling around town. But there is that kind of backup gas engine that will kick in when you run out of electricity. I'm excited about the redesign of the Tucson. I probably won't buy a lot of the plug-in hybrids, again, simply because, outside of my clients that live in California and some of the more energy conscious areas that have a lot of infrastructure, we still drive gas powered vehicles here in the South. But the hybrids are getting more and more popular. I just want to kind of see how this technology is going to shake out a little bit and how reliable it's going to be. But again, with Hyundai, you get that ridiculously long warranty, and that applies to the hybrid and plug-in hybrid models as well. So that powertrain includes the hybrid powertrain, 10 years, 100,000 miles. You're a little bit safer taking a chance on their technology than you might be on a manufacturer that only gives you 3 years, 36,000 miles. So we'll see how it goes, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this new Tucson is going to start making my short list of the small SUVs that I recommend to my clients going forward. And speaking of Hyundai plug-in hybrids, the Hyundai Santa Fe is now going to come out in a plug-in hybrid. So Hyundai is doubling down on their hybrid and plug-in hybrid technology for 2022. The partially electrified, as I'm going to call it, two-row midsize Santa Fe, it should go about 30 miles on a charge before switching over to gas. And since the Santa Fe got its full redesign a couple years ago for 2019, it's going to stay similar in terms of all the bells and whistles and the styling and technology and everything else. But this new plug-in model is due to hit dealer lots as early as July, so just next month, as in like starting tomorrow. Probably hit around mid-month. I'm still waiting to see when they come in. I've got several Palisades on order that are also due to arrive in July that I'm hoping will hit the ground soon. So that's what's going on with the Korean brands. Switching back to Japan, Nissan has finally redesigned their three-row midsize SUV, the Pathfinder. The last redesign was back in 2013, and the technology has just been so behind the curve. And, the interior and just their overall design has just been very, very dated. So the Pathfinder's always been known for having a spacious cabin and a decent third row for a midsize SUV and strong towing capacity. Unfortunately, it's also been known for reliability problems, everything ranging from engine cooling issues, numerous problems with the CVT transmission, some brake issues, AC leaks, and of course, problems with the fancy electronics that just about every manufacturer has been dealing with. But all those things add up to the Pathfinder having never made my recommendations list for the vast majority of my clients. And I'm skeptical about the new one as well, but I'm always hopeful. I'm always hopeful that they're really going to focus on reliability. But it's so hard to do that when the push is for more and more and more and more technology and really building vehicles for planned obsolescence. The vehicles are going to eventually become like cell phones, and they're not going to have to last 10 years because they're not going to be designed to. But for now, I really like them to be reliable, and I don't like my clients spending their time at the dealership while the car is being fixed under warranty, or if they keep it past the warranty period, certainly not having those huge unexpected repair bills when something goes wrong. So the new Pathfinder, Nissan actually skipped entirely the 2021 model year. So if you look up the Pathfinder, it goes through 2020 and then there's an abrupt stop, and now it's picking up for 2022. They have kept the same 3.5-liter V6 engine from the previous models. Despite the cooling issues, the engine itself has worked really well, so that's one of those things where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But they did ditch the problematic CVT transmission in favor of a 9-speed automatic. Now, the Pathfinder is still going to be a little less powerful than some of the other 3-row SUVs, especially when you're trying to get up the hills or make a pass on a highway. But the styling is really great. I love boxy SUVs. I think if you're going to drive an SUV, it should look like a box. Some of them just get a little too sleek and angular and funky looking. And I'm like, you know what? I realize we're trying to be aerodynamic, but just give me a big, rugged looking, muscular box with 4 wheels and I'm happy. So, and it's worked really well for the Hyundai Palisade, which is a little more like sleek and boxy, but the Telluride from Kia, I mean, that's just boxy, and I love the Telluride as well. So I think that boxy style, we're seeing that more and more for the SUVs, whereas your sedans are getting more sleek. Just trends, they come and go. But with the Pathfinder, you're going to get some more off-road capability. They're increasing the ground clearance, like Subaru's Ascent has a higher ground clearance. Their SUVs are trying to be more SUVs and not just, let's go to Starbucks and pick up the kids. It's, hey, let's go camping. Let's get out there in the great outdoors. And a higher ground clearance is going to give you a little more capability for getting off that beaten path. And if you get the all-wheel drive version of this new Pathfinder, you're going to get some additional driving modes like snow, mud and rut, so that means I'm stuck and I need to get out, and tow mode. So they're able to tweak the powertrain to be able to handle these additional situations that you might find yourself in between the powertrain and the suspension. They can all work together to make the vehicle do what you need it to do when you're not just driving around on nice, dry, smooth pavement. I really hope that this vehicle becomes more reliable because we really need as many good 3-row SUVs available on the market as we can get because it is becoming the most popular segment. And Nissan does have some cool technology and they're putting it all into this Pathfinder. They have Nissan's Safety Shield 360. Nissan has always been a leader in the driver safety aid technology, as well as their Pro Pilot Assist, which is their adaptive cruise control and lane centering. Those have been really good and pretty reliable technologies. The thing that I'm a little concerned about is they're going to a digital panel, a digital gauge, just like Honda did on the Civic. Sometimes those could be problematic, but again, they're pretty cool until they stop working and they have to replace your whole dash for like $6,000. But this is the direction we're going. I just really hope that the overall vehicle is not as problematic as previous years because the Pathfinder really does look cool. And I think that, I'd like to see Nissan continue to get stronger. They've just always been kind of the Jaguar of Japan, and you never know what you're going to get from them. Is it going to be crazy, awesome, and reliable, or is it going to be really problematic? And it just varies so much with Nissan. I just wish they were a little bit more consistent. But they are doubling down on this platform. So the Pathfinder and its luxury cousin, the Infiniti QX60, have always been the same vehicle, and they're continuing to be the same vehicle. So if you're looking a little more luxury, Infiniti, the QX60 has been their best-selling vehicle, which has been painful for the dealers because, like the Pathfinder, they skipped the 2021 model year. But they are coming back with a bang. They just did a huge global reveal of the 2022 QX60 earlier this week, featuring actress Kate Hudson. Okay, she's a great actress. I'm not really sure why they felt the need to bring a big Hollywood actor into their global reveal, but, whatever. PR people, whatever. What I really paid attention to was that while the powertrain and the technology, all that's going to be the same between the Pathfinder and the Infiniti. The Infiniti, they just really upped the game on the luxury. And again, Infiniti has been a little dated with a lot of their designs, a lot of their technology, but I think the wait for this model is going to be well worth it. There's still a lot of information we don't have on it, but with the global reveal, we were able to see the interior, and oh yeah, it is absolutely beautiful. There's quilted leather everywhere, including on the dash. It's got the beautiful, classy, soft touches that you expect from Infiniti. Although I tell you, I miss the analog clock. Infiniti always had this classy little analog clock on the dash, and of course that's gone. I had it. I had a 2005 the sport model of the coupe, the G35 coupe, and Isabella was her name. That was a beautiful car, and I loved my little clock, but that's a bygone era. But everything else just is really what you expect from a luxury brand. And some models are going to offer the ventilated seats. You're going to get the panoramic sunroof. There will even be a driver massage feature on some of the higher trim levels. So I really expect a lot from this vehicle. I'm just, again, concerned about the reliability and, have they worked out a lot of the kinks that they previously had in the previous generations of both the Pathfinder and the QX60. But expect this highly anticipated model to go on sale a little bit later this year. Don't know about pricing, but it's probably going to be north of 50 and into the 60s, but it might be worth it. Infiniti is also releasing an all-new model. Well, it's sort of all new. It's the QX55, which is in that luxury SUV coupe category. That it's got that fastback design like the BMW X4, the Mercedes GLC coupe. It's that really slopey fastback styled roofline that has absolutely terrible visibility, horrible rear passenger headroom, but boy do they look cool. So this is not a vehicle for people that have a lot of kids or need to get adults in the back of the car. This is great for younger people, single people that just want something that's an SUV but still looks really super sporty. The QX55, the reason I said it's sort of brand new, it's still based on the chassis of the old QX50, which if you go back far enough was formerly known as the FX, which was kind of that weird looking SUV they had. But the new QX55 it's going to be fully redesigned on the interior. It's got the better powertrain. I think it's really going to do a good job of competing with those SUV coupe designs that have a very niche market, but it's a pretty cool niche market to be in. They're already on dealer lots. They're just scarce like everything else, but you might get a chance to see one. They're pretty cool. All right, the Acura MDX is one of the other highly anticipated redesigns in that luxury SUV segment. And let me tell you, it was long overdue. Like the Infiniti QX60, the MDX skipped 2021 entirely despite being such a big seller for Acura. The MDX has been around since about 2001. They built them up at their plant in Ohio. And the problem for Acura has been that this three-row SUV kind of mid-size segment has just blown up in the market for the past 20 years. It's become so competitive, so popular, and quite frankly, the MDX just has not kept up over time. The new redesigned 2022 model actually went on sale back in February, so they're on dealer lots, and they're what Acura is calling its new flagship. Everybody loves that term, flagship. It just means they're biggest and they're best. But Acura claimed that the new MDX is going to be based on this all-new architecture that was unique and exclusive to the Acura brand. Well, not exactly. They seem to, again, have different definitions of words than I do, sort of like Honda doesn't seem to define sport the same way I do. Acura doesn't seem to define the term exclusive the same way the rest of us do, because this architecture is actually called the Global Light Truck Platform. It's already in use on the Honda CR-V. It's also going to underpin the Honda Passport, the Pilot, the Ridgeline. So it's on all these Hondas, so I'm not really sure how that makes it exclusive to the Acura brand, but honestly, who cares as long as it works, right? The important thing is that the MDX on this new architecture is going to be a little bit bigger, both in length and width, which is going to translate into that roomier cabin. The 3-row mid-size SUV segment has always suffered across all the brands for legroom. It's like, okay, we don't want to make it too big, but we're still going to try and cram 3 rows in there, which is fine for small children. But if you're trying to get adults or teenagers or anybody over 4 feet tall into these vehicles, they really felt very cramped. So the emphasis right now on all these is to make the cabins a little more spacious. Even if it means sacrificing a little bit of cargo space, which some do, they're still just trying to make them a little bit bigger so that you're not forced to go up to what I call the big honkin' SUV category, which is your Suburbans, your Yukon XLs, those humongous school buses. So they're getting a little more space in this midsize 3-row category, which is great. It's also going to give the MDX a stronger, more robust suspension. The car is going to be a lot more stable. Granted, the MDX has always felt like a very solid car. It's had that, 3.5 liter V6 that gives you the oomph that you need, and it just has a solid construction. So I've never considered the MDX to feel unstable or wobbly or even loose. It's just that now it's going to be even stronger and, still be able to handle the bumps in the road and give you that comfy ride without sacrificing some of that stability. Some of these midsize SUVs have these fancy suspensions that do float down the road, but for a lot of people, that floaty feeling translates into kind of loose, and it doesn't feel very secure. It doesn't feel comfortable. I even have a few clients that have said it makes them nauseous. So I think the new MDX, I think that new suspension is going to give you the best of both worlds. Now, what's really cool is later this year, they're going to be coming out with an MDX Type S, which is going to have 355 horsepower versus the 290 of the regular MDX, a boatload of torque, Brembo brakes, and an exclusive, there's that word again, they love using that word, an exclusive Sport Plus driving mode. So if you don't want to sacrifice sportiness for the practicality of a 3-row SUV, Acura is going to give it to you in this new MDX Type S. So that should be pretty fun. But despite all of these changes and this huge emphasis on this new architecture, I still think that the redesigned MDX is falling short of its rivals in that luxury category, specifically in the luxury part of it. Styling-wise, it's not a radical redesign. It still looks and feels like an MDX. It just has a few more angles, but I don't feel that it's a radical redesign. It's very nice looking, don't get me wrong. I like the way it looks. It's just, I don't feel like it's that special, and I realize that styling can be very much a personal preference. I just think that without the Acura emblem in the grille, that you could easily mistake it for a Honda or a Toyota. It's just, it doesn't scream luxury vehicle when you look at it. Oh, granted, I really like that you can get these dark multi-spoke wheels. I think those look awesome. And inside, it's nice. It's really, I guess that's the word I'm using for this. It's nice. It's stylish. It's modern. Honda's always had a very clean interior design, and they're continuing with that. And a lot of people like that. It's not overly complicated. It's not overly fussy, although they have put a lot of new technology in it, and I think it's getting fussier and more complicated, and that's just the direction cars are going, just like our cell phones. There's just so much that can be done on these things back from the days of a flip phone, and this is really kind of what the MDX is doing. The MDX has gone from a flip phone to a smartphone with this redesign. But unfortunately, despite the fact that the front seats are super comfy and reasonably luxurious, they stopped there. The second and third row are flat and hard and uncomfortable, and they just seem to kind of putter out and give up on the luxury once you got past the driver and the front row passenger. I mean, I guess they're assuming that people who buy these are just going to put small children in the back, and they're probably going to be in car seats anyways, so why bother making the second row or the third row have any amount of comfort, heaven forbid, should an adult put their butt in those seats, because it would be really, really uncomfortable. So I think that they just kind of stopped with the luxury there instead of making those, at least the second row kind of cushy, which the other competitors have long since done. They're not even power folding. You don't even get power folding anything. Power folding seats you can get in a Toyota. You can get them in a Hyundai. Why you cannot get them in an Acura, I don't know. Granted, you can manually configure the seats in interesting ways that are very useful, but you have to do it manually. I guess I'm spoiled. I like having to push a button and everything folds. From a woman's perspective and a mom's perspective, granted, I'm not a mom, but a lot of my clients are. When you're a mom, you always have your hands full of something. Whether you're holding the kids and their stuff or just the kids' stuff, you've got your hands full of everything. And if you're running a business, you've got business stuff in your hands. So being able to just push a button and have everything kind of happen for you versus having to put everything down, manually reconfigure it, lean over, pull this, push that. It's just nice to have a button. We just need anything that makes our lives easier. So give us a freaking button, Acura. But they didn't, so I guess it has me a little bit miffed with them. You do at least get more legroom in the second and third rows, so I guess that's something. And that cool panoramic sunroof is now standard, as is the Acura Watch suite of safety technology. It's just that the dash and the user interface, it used to be really, really kludgy and frustrating to use, and it's slightly less kludgy, but it still relies on the touchpad controller. And that takes a lot of practice to get to operate properly, because you have to hit the exact right place on it. And that exact right place seems to move around on you. So it has a really high learning curve, and it doesn't always work. And again, that is what has been plaguing Honda and Acura since about 2018, 2019, is their technology. It doesn't always work. And I hope that the new MDX does not get added to the class action lawsuit for all these technology problems, but, it might. So, while this fourth generation MDX does have a lot of improvements over the outgoing model, don't get me wrong, I just don't think they went far enough in their redesign to really compete in this super tough luxury three-row SUV segment. It's not as luxurious and stylish as like the Audi Q7. Certainly not as beautiful as this new Infiniti QX60 is going to be. And of course, Genesis last year came out with their first SUV, the GV80, which is super luxurious. And I think, hardcore loyalists for the Honda Acura brands, and there certainly are a lot of hardcore loyalists, and I have nothing against that. I think they're going to find this more simple, understated MDX very comfortable, very familiar, and that's going to work for them great. Personally, I would take a Hyundai Palisade or a Kia Telluride over a new MDX any day of the week. But that's just me. But speaking of three-row SUVs, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to see a nameplate that Jeep is bringing back in the three-row SUV category. So hang on, we'll be right back after this break. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Welcome back to The Straight Shift. Today we are talking about several brand new and fully redesigned models for the 2022 model year. And we've been talking a lot about SUVs. And in this three-row SUV category, which is one of the biggest market sellers, Jeep is bringing back the Wagoneer nameplate. If you remember the old Wagoneers, those were they were so cool, and they were the luxury Jeep. And Jeep's bringing it back in actually two vehicles, not one, because, why have one when you can have two for twice the price? But the 2022 Jeep Wagoneer and the 2022 Jeep Grand Wagoneer are going to be hitting lots this year. What's the difference? Both are going to be three-row, what's considered full-sized SUVs. So they're going to be a little bit bigger than the three-row mid-size we've been talking about. And they will both boast a 10,000-pound towing capacity, which is awesome. Think of the regular Wagoneer as more the standard version, while the Grand Wagoneer is going to be the ritzier, more luxurious version. Think Chevy Tahoe versus GMC Yukon. It's going to be very, very similar in terms of the level of swankiness between the two vehicles. There's going to be some differences, though, in size and powertrain. The regular Wagoneer is going to get the 5.7-liter V8 and the 8-speed automatic transmission. And they're going to combine that with this 48-volt, what's called a mild hybrid system. Chrysler calls that e-torque. Now, this is not a hybrid vehicle in that the hybrid battery helps power the vehicle so you get ridiculous gas mileage. That's not what this is. This mild hybrid system is a helper. It's a little helper system. To keep it simple, it supports the engine start-stop technology that helps you get better gas mileage, but can also be really frustrating. It helps support that so that works more efficiently and faster. And it also helps just the overall fuel economy for the vehicle, which they're desperately going to need given that this is a giant 5.7-liter V8. And while we haven't really gotten official fuel economy ratings on it yet, expect the emphasis to be more on the fuel part than on the economy part, as is true with just about any V8 out there. It kind of looks like a boxier, bigger version of the Grand Cherokee, but almost a cross between the more modern Grand Cherokee and the old classic true Wagoneer, just thankfully without the wood grain sides that were so popular in the 80s, alongside acid wash jeans and mullets. Some things in the 80s that just don't need to come back. But the Grand Wagoneer is going to be they're using this term, flagship SUV that's going to have a little more focus on the luxury, but without sacrificing that off-road capability that's really what Jeep does the best. It's going to be a little bit longer than the regular Wagoneer, so now you can kind of think Tahoe versus Suburban or Yukon versus Yukon XL. And if the 5.7-liter V8 wasn't big enough for you, this has the 6.4-liter V8, which explains the ridiculous towing capacity, but is also going to explain the abysmal fuel economy. Expect probably no better than a combined 15 miles per gallon. I mean, oh my God, that's even less than the Cadillac Escalade. But you're not buying this vehicle for its fuel economy. The regular Wagoneers are supposed to be hitting lots this summer. The Grand version will be coming later in the year, although I believe Jeep is already taking pre-orders for that luxury model. So I'm just kind of excited they're bringing back the Wagoneer nameplate. It just has so much history for Jeep. I just hope that this new vehicle can live up to that classic nameplate. Okay, now on the opposite end of the size spectrum, Volkswagen is introducing a new subcompact SUV that's even smaller than the Tiguan in their lineup, and they're calling it the Taos, T-A-O-S, Taos. I'm not sure how they're pronouncing it. But it's going to compete with the Mazda CX-30, the little tiny Buick Encore GX, and the less swanky but more off-road capable Subaru Crosstrek. So again, the whole industry is putting so much of their focus on these SUVs, anywhere from the little teeny weeny ones all the way up to these big giganimous ones. So if you can't find an SUV that fits you, problem is probably you, not the SUVs. But if boxy 3-row SUV is your jam, you need the bigger size. You need the functionality, though, of a minivan. And you're cringing. You're like, oh no, I'm that person. I've reached the point in my life where I have to have a minivan. Don't worry. Quit cringing. You don't have to settle anymore. Enter the 2022 Kia Carnival, or as I like to call it, the Kia Carnival. I've mentioned this vehicle in previous podcasts because I have been so excited about it, and they went on sale this spring, again, if you can get one because of the inventory shortage, and the Carnival is going to be as popular, I think, as the Telluride, so there's going to be challenge getting these, I think, even when the inventory situation hashes out, just because of Kia's production strategy, but I think this is going to be one that's well worth the wait. Bottom line, the 2022 Kia Carnival is a minivan masquerading as a 3-row SUV. So you get all of the passenger and cargo space of a minivan with the convenience of the sliding doors and all the other things that make minivans so danged practical. But the look of a boxy SUV that says, yes, you know what? I'm a mom, but I'm still cool. Or a dad, either one. It lets you easily transport up to 8 humans and all their crap, but without screaming suburban parent. Kia doesn't even call it a minivan. They call it an MPV, or multi-purpose vehicle. It's powered by the same 3.5-liter V6 and 8-speed transmission that's in that popular Telluride. So that's good. It's a proven drivetrain. And it's going to have all the same robust and easy-to-use technology, the great user interface, all the safety things. The only downside I see about the Carnival is that it's not going to be offered in an all-wheel drive platform, but most minivans aren't. The Toyota Sienna was one of the only minivans that you could truly get an all-wheel drive, so I don't think that's a huge deal for most people. Minivans are pretty stable, and the front-wheel drive, even if you live up north, where there's a lot of snow, everybody's been surviving on front-wheel drive minivans for a while, except for those Siennas. So I think it's not going to be a deal breaker, I think, for most people. There's also not a hybrid option like Chrysler has with the Pacifica. But yet, with all the hybrid technology that Hyundai is developing, remember, Hyundai and Kia are owned by the same parent company, and they share a lot of architecture across the brands. So I think that, eventually we may start seeing a hybrid model of it. It's just not, I haven't seen that it is on their horizons yet. But it is a super cool vehicle. And if you want to learn more about it, go to check out the review that my colleague and fellow writer at agirlsguidetocars.com, Jill Robbins, wrote. Jill got to play with a couple of these for about a week, and I'm totally jealous, and she loved it. She said, I look like a rock star queen driving this minivan. Like, when have you ever heard someone say that about a minivan? So the Kia Carnival is definitely worth checking out for families that need the functionality of a minivan, but can't quite stomach the styling and the aura of a minivan. The Kia Carnival is your solution. I love it. All right, now let's talk about another game-changing vehicle for 2022. I think the Kia Carnival is a game changer in the minivan segment. This game changer is from General Motors, and it's all electric. GM announced last year that the company is well on its way to an all-electric future. They made a commitment to releasing a staggering 30 new electric vehicles globally by 2025. Now, they said globally, which means that we're not going to see all of these in the U.S. market. A lot of them are going to be in the European market and the Asian market, but it's still a huge gauntlet to throw down in the U.S. automotive industry, especially for an American manufacturer. Now, GM introduced if you remember, they introduced the all-electric Chevy Bolt. Bolt with a B, not Volt with a V. That was a totally different car. We're talking about Bolt with a B. In 2017 is a low-cost electric vehicle. And it was really impressive that it got a 200-mile electric range, which was much more than the vast majority of other EVs on the market, not including the Teslas, of course. But for such a little tiny vehicle, It was really very spacious inside, and it had decent cargo space. And Chevy is redesigning the Bolt for 2022. It's going to be bigger. You're going to have more legroom for adults inside, and it'll have a range of about 250 miles. But this is not the game changer vehicle I'm talking about. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of history on GM's commitment to electric vehicles. This is what I'm talking about. For the 2022 model year, GM is releasing an all-electric, wait for it, Hummer. Huh? Yeah, Hummer. You heard me correctly. An electric Hummer. I guess they're trying to make up for all the gas that the original Hummers guzzled. I don't know. But if they're going to dominate the electric vehicle market, you might as well make that kind of first big splash as big as you can. They're making a very strong statement with an electric Hummer. That, and I think they just couldn't let Elon Musk have all the fun and publicity with his silly Cybertruck. So they're like, hey, hold my beer. Here is an electric Hummer. It definitely gets your attention. And, unlike the very, very Jetson, futuristic, weird-looking Cybertruck, the Hummer EV, to me, it looks like a cross between some of the really futuristic styling of that Cybertruck, but blended with kind of the original wide stance with the low roofline of the H1 Hummers and a little bit of the kind of retro styling of the Ford Bronco. It's a really interesting blend of the three. You definitely need to Google it. It's very cool looking, and it's going to have the off-road capability that you kind of expect the Hummer name to have. I mean, this was originally developed as a military vehicle that someone said, hey, let's drive that around the suburbs. That's a good idea. But GM is boasting that this thing is going to have 1,000 horsepower, four-wheel steering, and enough torque to kill yourself. But it's going to have this thing that GM calls Super Cruise. Super Cruise, which you just kind of have to say that way. You want to put your fists on your hips and push your chest out and say, Super Cruise. Well, Super Cruise is GM's version of autopilot technology. So when you are driving on well-mapped roads, it's going to be as hands-off as can safely be, very much like the autopilot is with Tesla. Of course, it's also going to have a price tag north of $100,000, although they are looking to release in a year or so a cheaper version. And by cheaper, I mean it'll probably start at like $80,000, but you could probably get it for under six figures. If you think that this is a crazy idea, you're definitely right, but crazy works in America. And although this 2022 Hummer EV is not scheduled to come out until next year, until the actual 2022 calendar year, despite that and the price tag, all of the 2022 models that are planned for production are already sold out. They sold out in less than 10 minutes of when they went on pre-sale. You would think this was, the hottest concert tickets, but literally 10 minutes after their global debut, which was back in October of 2020, they went on pre-sale at the end of that global debut. 10 minutes, boom, sold out. So if you want an electric Hummer, you are not going to get one until probably 2023 or maybe even 2024. But think of it this way. You can watch all the other people that bought those 2022 models deal with the inevitable problems that come with any new vehicle. But now we're talking about a new vehicle from GM and a fully electric Hummer. I mean, come on, what can possibly go wrong with that whole scenario? But I'm still excited to see them come out, and hopefully GM will be able to work out all those kinks. And so if you do want one, by the time you can actually get your hands on one, they might have a few less problems. But, go big or go home. So if GM's going to make this commitment to electric vehicles, let's just start with the most ridiculous one that they could possibly come up with. And hopefully this will help balance out their gas mileage karma from the old Hummers. There are a lot of other really exciting models coming out, either brand new or redesigned for the 2022 model year, but I have already talked your ear off, and these are the ones that I'm the most excited about and that I think that my clientele will be most excited about, possibly not the Hummer, but I have a feeling I'm going to be buying a lot of the other vehicles that we talked about. So I would encourage you guys to, look up some of the pictures of these, check out some of the reviews at A Girl's Guide to Cars.com. That is the really top women's automotive blog in the world that I'm honored to write for. And they've got a lot of cool stuff. They're going to have some good video reviews as well of some of these vehicles. So check them out. And until next time, I hope everyone has a very fun, safe, and happy 4th of July. Stay cool and stay safe, folks. I'm out of here.
The Straight Shift podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.